Belfrage Show, great to have you along again. Donald Trump is the big story again this morning, so we'll get into it. Donald Trump reacting to the guilty verdict. We are also, as we will talk about Republicans fighting back. Republicans have been out and talking about over the weekend fighting back. Do you think that they will? So we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail coming up this morning as well. Also, Americans are really negative about the economy. So interesting piece at thehill.com on that. Been watching the economy very, very closely. And there's some interesting things going on with World War II veterans. So they are, a number of them returning to France for the first time since World War II. So we'll talk about that and more. Welcome to the Greg Belfrage Show. It's great to have you along. We'll get underway here shortly.
GOP lawmakers allege has unveiled efforts to evade public transparency. Kristen Goodwin, Fox News.
Jury's election starts today for the president's son Hunter Biden's federal gun trial in Delaware. He's accused of lying about his illegal drug use when he bought a gun he ended up owning for 11 days. Police in Akron, Ohio, with suspects in the shooting of 25 people, one of them killed by street officers. An earlier been called to break up a birthday party with more than 40 people. They were called back
All right.
after reports of gunshots.
We recovered 2 handguns at the scene. Based on the layout of the spent shell casing, it appears consistent with someone driving by shooting out of a car. We believe that some individuals at the party may have returned fire based on physical evidence at the scene.
Akron Police Chief Brian Harding says the 27-year-old male is dead. 2 victims are in critical.
I'm just doing some things, getting the board, the control boards right in front of me, getting the board live and up on the air. And then also turning on the delay. So those are some of the things you see me doing here. We get underway this morning.
Well, the weather's warming up and summer's just around.
I really appreciate those of you who have been watching on YouTube. Thank you. Very much appreciated. And if you got like-minded friends, please share this with them. I would really, really appreciate it.
Relief Factor is a 100% drug-free daily supplement that helps your body fight.
And you do that by liking, sharing. It really does make a difference, so thank you.
It doesn't just mask
Okay, let me get my thoughts together here. We'll get underway.
back, neck, joints, or muscles. In 3 weeks or less, you'll start to feel the difference all day, every day. So whatever you like to
Big news is Trump. Trump was on Fox and Friends over the weekend and talking about what the verdict, the reaction that it's had on his family. And so he would also like the U.S. Supreme Court to take up the case. He was on True Social talking about that. Also, we had Donald Trump. He has gone to TikTok now. He has set up an account on TikTok, and it's just huge. He gained over 1.5 million followers, bam, like that, as soon as he was on TikTok. And then he was at the UFC. And his first TikTok video was him at the UFC. So we'll talk about that. This is the question really for me, and we'll talk about this later in the show, is whether this verdict is going to be waking people up as to what's going on. And will they wind up participating, in the process? Excuse me, let me move this one. Nah, that's. There, that's a little better shot, I think. But what effect is this having on people throughout the country? Will they participate in the process as a result of what we've seen happen? So that's one of the things we'll talk about. Fox News had a poll. This is, or reported on this. I'm not sure whose poll this is. It looks like it's Fox News poll. Trump verdict makes significant number of Republicans less likely to support him. I find that really hard to believe. So those are among the things we'll talk about this morning. Just about to get underway, so let's do it. Thanks again for being here.
Tonight and tomorrow morning are low overnight at 66, and then tomorrow's high back up in the mid to upper 70s with scattered rain. From the Storm Center at Kettleman TV, I'm Brian Karstens.
The Sioux Empire's most talked about talk shows are right here. Kello, News Talk 1320, 107.9, and Kello.com. The Doctor of Discernment is on the air.
Tell you what, I don't know about you, but I'm going to go to bed.
The Biden administration has a fatal attraction to nutty ideas.
Dispensing a daily dose of common sense, no prescription required.
I love the show.
I don't hate going to work anymore.
Americans love a winner and will not tolerate a loser. America.
Good morning, my friend. The marketplace of ideas is open. It's great to have you along. I hope you had a really wonderful weekend. It went by so quickly. I hope you enjoyed it, though. Great to be with you. Big welcome to the folks watching on YouTube. YouTube is up and running. We've got the Greg Belfrage Show available on YouTube. And if you miss it live, I've been posting that each day at Kello.com afterward as well. So you can get it throughout the course of the morning. Great to be with you. Let's get underway. Donald Trump talking about his guilty verdict. And Trump did an interview with Fox and Friends. This was an interview that aired yesterday. And again, Donald Trump really talking about the impact on his family. And he said to Melania, he said, I have a wonderful wife who has to listen to this stuff all the time. They do that for this reason. But they put this stuff in to create havoc. These are bad people. I know everything they're doing. I know every move they make. I get it. But a lot of people don't, he said, but it's tougher. Or I think probably in many ways it's tougher on my family than it is on me, he said. So then, this was an interview that Pete Hegseth did on Fox and Friends yesterday. And so he asked, how has Melania been doing since the verdict came out? And Trump said, she's fine, but I think it's very hard for her, but she's fine. And then he talked about his son, Barron, who had recently graduated from high school, saying Barron is amazing. And he said he's been able to continue his life nearly uninterrupted. He's a very good student. He's applied to colleges, gets into everywhere he goes, you know. He's very sought after from that standpoint, Trump said. And then Trump talking about the possibility of going to jail. Will he wind up in jail or will it be house arrest? And Trump said, he's okay. He said, with whatever happens. He said, I don't know that the public would stand it. I'm not sure that the public would stand for it, he said. And there are a lot of people then on the left who are, what is Donald Trump saying? Is he encouraging people to... He's just saying, I don't think the public will stand it. And we'll talk about that in more detail over the course of the morning. The public reaction to this. So also, Trump on True Social last night, talking about his sentencing. And he said the sentencing for not having done anything wrong will be conveniently for the fascists 4 days before the Republican National Convention. And he said a radical left Soros-backed DA who ran on a platform of I will get Trump, reporting to an acting local judge appointed by the Democrats, will make a decision which will determine the future of our nation The United States Supreme Court must decide, Trump put in capital letters. However, that's what Trump's saying on True Social. Trump's attorneys say it's unlikely that Trump's legal team would ask for the sentencing date to be moved. And he anticipated going through with that date because they want to be able to move forward with an appeal. So the sooner they have that sentencing date, the sooner then that they can move forward with an appeal. Another Trump attorney told CNN on Friday, we are going to take this as high and as far as we need to, including to the U.S. Supreme Court, to vindicate President Trump's rights. I also mentioned Donald Trump joining TikTok, set up a new account, and in the first, he had literally, like that, had over 1.5 million followers. So he launched his first TikTok account while attending a UFC event on Saturday night. And his first video on TikTok was, I watched it this morning. It's a 13-second clip featuring highlights of his walk into the New Jersey event, and it went viral. And it was UFC President Dana White introduced Trump. He says, the president is now on TikTok. And he said, it's my honor. Trump responds. And then it's just click, 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 just very brief shots of him with the crowd and folks going nuts, and he's shaking hands. And then Trump says at the end of it, again, it's very short, it's 13 seconds long. Trump says, that was a good walk-on, right? So by yesterday morning, it had 1.7 million likes by Sunday morning, with his account already reaching 1.6 million followers. So it's just wild. The Hill is reporting on the reactions of a number of Republicans who have not necessarily been big Trump fans, and that they are coming back into the fold, so to speak. We'll put that in air quotes. Mitch McConnell, moderate Senator Susan Collins, among others, coming to Trump's defense. Nikki Haley expected to do the same. Haley said last week she would vote for Trump. She actually was a couple of weeks ago, I think, that she had said that. McConnell said of the verdict now, he said the charges never should have been brought in the first place. He predicted the conviction will be overturned on appeal. Collins said that prosecutor Alvin Bragg had blurred the lines between the judicial system and the electoral system. And others who are jumping on board. So the polls are pretty much trash, I think, at this point. They really are. I mean, it's latest polls, and it'll be interesting. So Donald Trump Jr., this is Donald Trump's son, criticizing Republicans to fight back against Democrats. He said, you're telling your base, the people who are watching, you're fighting, but you know damn well that you're not actually fighting. And we see that so much. He was on the Tucker Carlson show. And he said, that's the difference between the Democrats. I mean, they've shown they'll put their opposition in jail. They'll smother them. They'll silence them. There's nothing they won't do to preserve power. And so he said there's an imbalance between the two parties, and he says, again, of Republicans, you're telling your base you're fighting, but you're not actually fighting. And we see that so much. So House Speaker Mike Johnson was on Fox News Sunday yesterday, and he said, we will fight back with everything in our arsenal, he told Shannon Bream of Fox. And he said, it's important, though, Republicans must remain within the rule of law. He said, we are the rule of law party. Chaos is not a conservative value. We have to fight back, and we will, with everything in our arsenal. But we will do that within the confines of the rule of law. We believe in our institutions. We are conservatives. We're trying to conserve the greatest country in the history of the world. And its institutions are an important part of that. Our system of justice is an important part of that. But they're promising to retaliate for the verdict, the guilty verdict against Trump. And again, he said, we'll fight back with everything in our arsenal. So we'll talk about that in more detail coming up this morning, because there's a very interesting Stephen Miller, who was a former advisor to Donald Trump, also did an interview. He was on Jesse Waters' program on Friday, and this would have been on Friday evening. And Stephen Miller said that Republicans need to get off the sidelines, he said. They need to unshackle themselves from their self-imposed restraints and respond to these Democrats who are trying to destroy America. And Miller said, we can't just sit back and say, oh, I hope everything corrects itself. We have to get in the game, Republicans. We want every Secretary of State. Are you purging your voter rolls of non-citizens right now? Is every Republican state AG opening investigations into voter fraud right now? Is every House committee controlled by Republicans using its subpoena power in every way it needs to right now? And he goes on at length. He said every facet of Republican Party politics and power has to be used right now to go toe-to-toe with Marxism and beat these communists. And he said, told Jesse Waters, that's the task, he said. Very, very interesting. Jonathan Turley's also written a very interesting piece at the this New York Post, where Turley writes about this and talking about asking the question. He said, I wonder if I missed a page. Hold on. Oh, here we go. Turley said, sometimes it takes a great abuse to shock the public into recognizing the need to act. And he said it could prove to be the moment that galvanized many outside of Manhattan, the moment when citizens saw where our rage has taken us. Sometimes we have to be forced to see what we have become to better understand who we are. We are better than this, he says. But just that sentence, sometimes it takes a great abuse to shock the public into recognizing the need to act. Is that what you are seeing? We'll talk about that in, and again now as more Republicans are coming and giving their support to Donald Trump, you wonder if that's what we see happening. Also, Alan Dershowitz, who is a professor emeritus at Harvard Law, was on Newsmax yesterday talking about Donald Trump's sentencing. And he said, I think the judge will sentence him to a prison term of 2 to 3 years. but suspend the sentence as to send a message that he deserves to get a prison term, he said. So I know there has to be a pre-sentence report, but there are ways of trying to move this. The judge, I'm sure, made up his mind what he was going to sentence him before the verdict came back, because he knew what the verdict was going to be based on the instructions. The jury had no choice but to convict. Jonathan Shirley says he is still doesn't know what to make of the judge's instructions. And so Dershowitz said the trial wasn't a trial, but a predetermined, orchestrated result, he said. This is what he told Newsmax yesterday. And Dershowitz said, nobody could have won the case. It didn't matter what the facts or the lawyers were. All that mattered is that the person on trial was Donald Trump. There are dozens of appealable issues. I'm probably the most experienced private appellate lawyer in criminal cases in the country. And I can tell you that a trial that lasted as long as this one did, I've never seen so many reversible errors, said Alan Dershowitz. And he went on. I mean, when he gets one, I appreciate his passion for the law. And if you're not familiar with Alan Dershowitz, he's a Democrat, as is Jonathan Turley. And Jonathan Turley even writes in his latest column, that you don't have to like Trump to understand what's going on here and the injustice of what's happening to Trump. And that's Jonathan Turley. And Dershowitz, again, is also a Democrat. And he said the Trump team is going to need to be enhanced, he said. You should never have the same people who lost the trial do the appeal, because they're unconsciously always going to be trying to defend their own actions. You need outsiders who are prepared to criticize some of the actions taken by the trial lawyers in order to move this thing forward, he said. So again, Donald Trump wants to see this in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. And that has been a big story over the weekend. I think one of the other big stories remains the economy. The Hill has got a piece this morning, and the headline asks a great question. Why are Americans so negative about the economy? It's a big problem for Biden, says the Hill. And they talked to an economist named Shernette McLeod, and she said of prices are something that people feel every day. They go to the grocery store, they go to the gas station, and prices are rising, she said. Even though we say inflation is coming down, they're still seeing higher price levels. They remember back in 2019 when prices were this much, and now they're 20% higher, or for some things, 30 to 40% higher, she said. And she said this is the first time for some Americans, they've never experienced this kind of inflation in their lifetimes before. She said, we haven't seen inflation like this in over 40 years. For many people under 40, they've never really gone through an episode of really high inflation in a short period of time. So for a lot of them, it's a shock, she said. So the issue of inflation, and there was another story that I saw. This was last week, where Americans were being asked, well, do you plan to travel with, the economic challenges that we're seeing in the country right now? Do you plan to travel this year? And a number of Americans are saying, yeah, plan to travel. And you've got to wonder if that is for many a respite from all of this that we have seen going on. So we will talk about the economy a little bit in more detail coming up this morning. And I wanted to make sure that we share this. More than 60 veterans of World War II took off Friday from Dallas to France. And for some, it's the first time they've ever been in France. They flew over France, never have set foot in France. And this group of 60 veterans ranges in age from 96 to 107 years old. And so it was American Airlines flying them to France to commemorate the 80th anniversary of D-Day, which occurred. And so there were various ceremonies then to commemorate the day in France and to thank veterans. And one of the I think it was the chairman of this event said, "We will never forget, and we have to tell them." So pretty incredible stories. You're seeing these veterans traveling to France. And that's a look at the big stories this morning. Now, coming up, we'll run down stories that are trending in Belf's News Gallery. That's still to come. Great to have you along. 626, and you're listening to the Greg Belfrage Show on Kello.
528 Kello News Talk 1320 107.9.
The Kello Hotline is brought to you by Tires. See in-store
I got a lot of stuff, and those are, that's just the big stories.
I'm John Hughes, a Republican running for District 13.
I got a similar size stack of stuff for the trending stories. There are a lot of them on a Monday morning.
Representative, I will fight to cut property taxes, reduce crime, and make sure we have a safe, thriving community to lead to the next generation. I will support and defend all individual rights guaranteed by our Constitution, including the Second Amendment. I'm asking for your vote on June 4th. I'm John Hughes, and I approve this message.
Paid for by John Hughes for District 13.
Bring charm from the outdoors into your home with Renewal by Andersen picture and combination windows. Optimizing a beautiful view and light in the bedroom, kitchen, or living room from ABC Seamless of Sioux Falls. Call 605-646-2667 today.
PTSD affects 3.6% of the adult population. June is National Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder Awareness Month. Southeastern wants you to know that it's okay to get help. Call Southeastern at 605-336-0510.
CNR Supply is your local
Just checking on my timing here.
We can answer all your questions, from Raven products to pumps, planters, down to personal and UTV sprayers. Parts, tanks, and repair kits too. Hi, I'm Brock. And I'm Chad with CNR Supply. Not sure? Just call and ask. We'll tell you how to put it to use in the field. Or stop in, visit the parts counter guys, and see our new multiple induction cart. And everything else new at CNR Supply. CNR Supply. Your choice when quality is important.
Hi, I'm Allie Gabriel, a working mom with 3 private school daughters. 3 years ago, my family chose to move from Minnesota to South Dakota. The reason? We wanted quality, common sense leadership. That's why I'm supporting Dean Karski and Dan Kipley for Minnehaha County Commission. They're well-informed, well-intentioned, and their conservative values align with mine. Please vote for Dean Karski and Dan Kipley for Minnehaha County Commission on June 4th.
Paid for by the Sioux Empire Better Government Committee.
Partly cloudy skies today for the Sioux Falls area. Plenty warm, our high 84 and a southeasterly wind at 5 to 15. Scattered shower and thunderstorm chances will be going up after midnight tonight. Low temperature at 66. Scattered rain around the region tomorrow. Our high temperature at 70.
And in Sioux Falls at 629. It's mostly cloudy. 67 currently at Kello. Joe Bowman's in the Kello.com News Center, and among stories that Joe's following for us this morning, following the guilty verdict in the Trump trial, Governor Kristi Noem had a few things to say on X. The Avera Research Institute has received a 5-year, $5.4 million grant to fight infant mortality. Oh, excuse me. We've got Those are Friday's headlines. South Dakota voters heading to the polls tomorrow. Joe will have details. Also, the primary will mark the start of a new election verification process. All right. Sorry, as I was looking at that, I'm like, no, this is. So Joe will have details on those stories and more coming up for us here in just a moment. This hour of the Greg Belfrage Show brought to you by the Window Shop of Mitchell, offering custom windows starting at $99 a month. Coming up, we'll run down all of the stories that are trending this morning, and a good majority of them involve Donald Trump. You're listening to the Greg Belfrage Show.
The first criminal trial of a first son begins today.
Jury selection begins in Hunter Biden's federal gun trial. The president's son faces 3 charges brought by the special counsel, David Weiss. He's accused of buying and possessing a firearm while addicted to illegal drugs, which is a violation of federal law. Hunter Biden has pleaded not guilty and claims he is being politically targeted.
That's Fox's John Scott. Firefighters are battling a massive fire about 60 miles east of San Francisco.
Intense flames and powerful winds. Just some of the dangerous threats firefighters battled with the coral fire. Fire exploded into over 14,000 acres by Sunday afternoon. The largest blaze in the area so far this year.
Kimberly Cruz of Fox 2 Fayette, KTXL in Sacramento. America's listening to Fox News.
News brought to you by Sioux Falls Implant and Sedation Dentistry. They fix your teeth while you sleep.
Kello News Time 6:31. I'm Joe Bowman in the Kello.com News Center. South Dakota voters head to the polls tomorrow. The June 4th state primary will decide on Republican and Democratic candidates for the state offices in the November election. There are a combined 68 primary races that are uncontested between the two parties. Campaign spending in a number of South Dakota primary races are raising a few eyebrows. Some legislative candidates who voted against carbon capture pipeline bills are facing challengers with some serious money behind them. Representative Carla Lems of Canton believes that's more than just coincidence.
And you really have to start digging to see this PAC connected to this PAC connected to that PAC. And I'll tell you what, it certainly looks like it is the CO2 pipeline project that is drawing all of this money into the state of South Dakota.
Several legislative races in the northern part of the state, where the pipeline debate has been the most contentious, are among the most expensive in state history. Tomorrow's South Dakota primary will mark the start of a new election verification process. Now ballots from 5% of the precincts in each county will be hand counted, then compared with results from electronic tabulation equipment. According to the new state law, post-election audits must be conducted within 15 days of a primary or general election. In an effort to reduce forest fire risk, Senators Rounds and Thune are working on a proposal that would increase timber harvesting in the Black Hills. Rounds says the Biden administration has done everything it can to restrict timber harvesting. The senators say if nothing is done, timber companies are certain to close, local jobs will be lost, and taxpayers will be burdened with the expense of proper forest management. And the numbers from this year's National Drug Take-Back Day are in. The DEA says over 9 tons of unused medication was collected throughout a 5-state region of Nebraska, Iowa, Minnesota, and the Dakotas. There are now hundreds of collection sites open daily in South Dakota. This is the 26th year the Take-Back program has been in operation. From the Kello.com News Center, I'm Joe Bowman.
The news never stops. Kello News Talk 1320 107.9.
Further brought to you by Intech Cleaning and Restoration. If you need it clean, call the Intech team. IntechClean.com.
Partly cloudy skies today for the Sioux Falls area. Our high temperature 84 and a southeasterly wind 5 to 15. Scattered showers and thunderstorms will begin popping up late tonight and tomorrow morning. Our low overnight at 66, and then tomorrow's high back up in the mid to upper 70s with scattered rain. From the Storm Center at Kettleland TV, I'm Brian Carstens.
Where the only race that matters is the race for a better informed public. Kello News Talk 1320 107.9 and Kello.com.
If you think you're getting great deals buying Chinese junk online, you could be putting your health at risk. I'm Kim Commando for Total AV, the award-winning antivirus software that stops malware. Get a year of protection for just $19 at protectwithkim.com. You've probably seen ads for a Chinese company called Shein, the world's largest online fashion retailer. What has it done to gain such a title even over Amazon? It sells clothing for unbelievable prices. $2 shirts, a $20 wedding dress. There's a reason the clothes are so cheap. They're made with toxic chemicals. Authorities in South Korea inspected 93 Shein products and found that half contained toxic chemicals that can mess with your hormones and potentially cause cancer. One pair of shoes had over 400 times the legal limit of these chemicals. So to check your clothes, drop a bead of water on the fabric. If it stays beaded up, rolls around, and leaves no residue at all, you have a problem. Return or trash it now. Enter to win a new iPhone at winfromkim.com. Do you need statistics to finally convince you to bite the bullet and get good antivirus software? Well, here's the cold, hard truth. Ransomware makes up 68% of all cyber attacks. 72% of businesses were
All right, there we go.
last year. Phishing scams are the most reported cybercrime
Just
in the
trying
United
to.
States. Last but
On
not
Monday
least,
mornings, there could
AI
be quite a few stories that are trending, and I try to sort them out in a way that makes sense.
when you're not using antivirus software,
So, as we're number of stories involving Trump, I try to group all those together. I also try to group them together in terms of what I think the importance of them may be to you.
$19 a year. You get antivirus protection up to 5 devices. Go to protectwithkim.com.
Like this story is trending. Rupert Murdoch got married for the 5th time.
Antivirus software at 85%
Who cares?
off.
I mean, that story is trending. What?
Protectwithkim.com.
The Kim Commando Show, live Saturday mornings at 9. Kello, News Talk 1320, 107.9.
All right, we got a few minutes to go here. Thanks so much for those of you who watch. I appreciate it. I have been pleasantly surprised by the number of folks who are watching. So again, what we do, it's just the 6 a.m. hour of the Greg Belfrage Show. We originate out of Sioux Falls, South Dakota. For those of you who are not familiar with us, KELO in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And as the show goes on, then callers that you're hearing are generally from within our region. Start out with a look at the big news and then trending stories, and then as we go on, we break it down a little bit more. And I start getting to caller, listener comments and getting, your thoughts on events and what's going on.
That's why I'm supporting Dean Karski and Dan Kipley for Minnehaha County Commission. They're well-informed, well-intentioned, and their conservative values align with mine. Please vote for Dean Karski and Dan Kipley for Minnehaha County Commission on June 4th.
Paid for by the Sioux Empire Better Government Committee. The headlines remind us daily, the world is a dangerous place.
Hey, we're about a minute away here.
You know better. And your gut knows that time is short to prepare for a world that is 4 missed meals away from chaos. My Patriot Supply has helped over 3 million families become more self-reliant as the company Americans trust to prepare. Go to mypatriotsupply.com and secure their best-selling 3-month emergency food kits. Each contain delicious breakfasts, lunches, and dinners, averaging over 2,000 calories per day. Secure at least 1 food kit for each family member. For a limited time, save $200, plus get free shipping on all their Ready Hour 3-month emergency food kits. You're not ready if it's not Ready Hour food. My Patriot Supply also has solar-powered generators, water filtration units, biomass stoves, heirloom seeds, and critical survival gear. Shop MyPatriotSupply.com today. MyPatriotSupply.com.
Get the latest updates for your kitchen.
Catch up with the latest news every morning, everywhere you've got a smart speaker.
Just say, Alexa, play Kello News Talk.
Or download our free app at Kello.com and let Greg Belfrage join you for breakfast every weekday morning.
Kello.
6:39, partly cloudy in 67. I hope you had a really great weekend. Welcome to the Greg Belfrage Show. This hour is brought to you by the Window Shop of Mitchell, offering custom windows starting at $99 a month.
Trending now.
Add them on Facebook.
Let the tweeting begin. Does that news and views?
Well, Donald Trump said He's okay with the possibility of being sentenced to jail or on house arrest. He said, I'm okay with it. He told Fox and Friends during a weekend interview. He said, I don't know that the public would stand it. I'm not sure that the public would stand for it, Trump said. So as you know, we talked about this on Friday. Trump convicted of all 34 counts on Thursday. And Trump went on to say that this is tougher on his family than it is on him. And he talked about Melania, and he said, she's fine, but I think it's very hard for her. But she's fine, he said. And then he talked about his son, Barron. He said he's amazing and that he's been able to continue his life nearly uninterrupted. So, also, Donald Trump has now joined TikTok. He did this on Saturday. This is after he had opposed legislation passed earlier this year forcing ByteDance to divest from the Chinese or face a ban. So Trump is on TikTok, and you want to reach people. It's, the president's been on TikTok, and now Donald Trump is on TikTok. I know a number of folks are on the platform. So also, as Donald Trump joined TikTok, he did that the same time he received a standing ovation at a UFC event then on Saturday night. This was in Newark, New Jersey. And it was Trump's first public appearance since the guilty verdict then on Thursday. And I think UFC commentator Joe Rogan said the round of applause he's getting right now is pretty staggering, he said, as Trump entered the event. As we talk about Trump and his felony conviction, Representative Dean Phillips, who is a Democrat from Minnesota, said that Trump's felony conviction, pardoning, he said Trump ought to be pardoned for the good of the country, is what he said. So he said the New York Governor Kathy Hochul should consider the pardon, not to exonerate him, but to heal the nation. And I laughed when I saw this over the weekend. Seriously, you think Kathy Hochul wants to heal the nation or allow people to be able to move forward? Yeah, don't hold your breath. And Phillips said, Donald Trump is a serial liar, cheater, and philanderer, a 6-time declarer of corporate bankruptcy, an instigator of insurrection, and a convicted felon who thrives on portraying himself as a victim. And he said Governor Kathy Hochul should pardon him for the good of the country. So, no, you don't think she should pardon him. So the president was asked about this, was asked about Trump now being a political prisoner. And the president was asked this on Friday. And the president said of Trump, he'll be given the opportunity, as he should, to appeal that decision, just like everyone else has that opportunity. Biden said that it was reckless, it's dangerous, it's irresponsible for anyone to say this was rigged just because they don't like the verdict, he said. And he grinned through some of this. You've seen the photos of the president grinning while he's talking, by walking off stage, ignoring the reporters and questions and grinning. Even Axios, even left-wing Axios is reporting that story. That's why it's trending. It's at a number of outlets this morning. So we talk about the president grinning. Donald Trump it took them about 3 hours for the Trump campaign to turn that moment into a campaign video. The story from Axios. So It's the spin that Axios puts on it. Not that the president's grinning like an idiot. It's that Trump has turned it into a campaign video. Man, it's just, I have such difficulty understanding why people respond to these things in the way they do. Also, it's the 80 years since the Allied troops launched their D-Day invasion Normandy in France, really turned the tide of World War II. And so 4 days ahead of the 80th anniversary of those landings, you had people that were jumping out over France. I think 3 World War II era transport planes dropped a new generation of civilian parachutists then to cheers from the crowd. So they had like some 70 jumpers that participated in this, and they were dressed in World War II uniforms, and some of them are former soldiers, a number of them are not. So the planes took off from southern England for the 90-minute flight, and then they dropped off, jumping out. So 70 people jumping out as the 80th anniversary marking D-Day taking place. Also, another story trending, Russia was not invited to the events. All of these events that are taking place, Russia was not invited. Organizers had said in April that Vladimir Putin would not be invited to the events in France, but that some Russian representatives would be welcome in recognition of Russia's sacrifice during World War II. Also, the date now has been set for Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School to be demolished. You'll remember that's where 17 people were killed in a mass shooting back in early 2018. So the Broward School District said the process to tear down the building will begin either right around June 14th, 13th or 14th. And they'll demolish the building in stages. And folks saying they're glad that the building is going to come down. It's a reminder of painful experiences for a lot of families. Also, jury selection will begin today on Hunter Biden's trial on gun charges. So Hunter Biden slated to stand trial starting today, connection with these charges stemming from his purchase and possession of a firearm. Couple of sports stories that are trending. The Edmonton Oilers are heading to the Stanley Cup final. And this will be the first time in the Connor McDavid era. And Connor McDavid, sports writers say, played a huge role in making it happen in clinching Game 6. So it'll be the Edmonton Oilers. Also, the Florida Panthers are back in the Stanley Cup final for the second consecutive year. Other sports stories that are trending. Caitlin Clark, on Saturday, she and the Indiana Fever won a 71-70 thriller over the Chicago Sky, and she was fouled pretty hard. Kennedy Carter made a basket for the Sky, and with about 15 seconds left in the third quarter, and quickly went to defend Clark, who was looking for an inbound pass, but before Clark could receive the pass, she was knocked to the floor by a shoulder check from Carter, who was immediately whistled for a foul. And Caitlin Clark said, yeah, that's just not a basketball play. But as you know, I've got to play through it. That's what basketball is about at this level. I thought we've been really physical. We've missed some bunnies around the rim, so hopefully those fall in the fourth, she said. But she was knocked down. And foul was called. We'll have to wait for that live fight between Jake Paul and Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson had a medical scare on a flight here within the last couple of weeks, last weekend, and this was due to a recent flare-up of Mike Tyson's ulcer. And so now the medical recommendation is that Mike Tyson should do minimal to light training over the next few weeks and then return to full training. So they're postponing this. And they released a statement saying both Mike and Jake are in agreement that it's only fair to ensure that both athletes have equal training time to prepare for the match. Do you know who Taylor Momsen is? She is an alum of Gossip Girl. She got bit by a bat while performing with her band, The Pretty Reckless, in Spain. And there's video of this. She shared an Instagram video on Friday, showed the moment the bat landed on her leg. And she said to the crowd, you guys are pointing at something and I don't know what you're saying. Because the crowd had seen this. They saw the bat fly on her. And she said, there's a flying effing bat on my leg right now. Can someone help me, please? So she was trying to shield herself from the bat. And she joked, I must really be a witch. So she said, it's all right. The bat's fine. He's going to be my new friend. Well, she was apparently bitten by the bat and will have to undergo rabies shots as a result. Pretty wild. The whole thing caught on video and in front of a live crowd as she was performing. Also, hundreds of anti-Israel protesters crashed a gay pride parade in Philadelphia yesterday. Hundreds of LGBTQ plus people were met by political protesters who were chanting the anti-Israel slogan, Palestine will live forever, from the sea to the river. And they brought the Philly Gay Pride Parade to a halt as a result. The former second in command of the U.S. Navy has been arrested. 62-year-old Robert Burke is accused of steering government contracts to a particular company in exchange for future employment. Maybe you're asking yourself what I ask myself. You're 62 years old. What future employment are you worried about? I mean, wouldn't it be time to retire? So he was a former commander of the U.S. Naval Forces in Europe, now facing charges. Also, one man is dead. More than 20 people were injured early yesterday. This is a shooting at a large birthday party in Akron, Ohio. And police there believe someone in a vehicle opened fire on partygoers just after midnight, and that someone at the event may have returned fire. Said shortly after those calls came in, the call center received more notifications from local hospitals that multiple persons were arriving in the emergency departments with gunshot wounds. So again, one man was killed, more than 20 people were injured as a result. Claudia Sheinbaum won a landslide victory to become Mexico's first female president. And that story is trending. Also, OPEC has announced that they will extend their production cuts, talking about oil production now, production of oil. They'll be extending those cuts into 2025. So this was at a meeting of the OPEC alliance. Also, Atlanta declared a state of emergency as they were battling several major water main breaks. It's been going on since Friday. And this story trending. And it was taking some time, but so much so, they had one water break and then a second water main break occurred later, and repair crews have been working literally around the clock trying to get those water main breaks under control. Also, California firefighters made significant progress yesterday to tame a wind-driven wildfire that scorched about, thousands of acres east of San Francisco, burned down a home and forced residents out of the area. And that's a look at the stories trending this morning in Belf's News Gallery. Thanks so much for letting me join you this morning. It's a beautiful morning. Getting a little bit of sunshine now, partly cloudy, 67. This hour of the Greg Belfrage Show brought to you by the Window Shop of Mitchell, offering custom windows starting at $99 a month.
News and views you just can't hear anywhere else.
Well, that's it for this morning's live stream, my friend. Thank you so much for being here. Please, if you like what we're doing, please like, share it. If you don't like it, give us a thumbs down. Fair enough, but it's great to have you along. Very, very much appreciated. I'm going to get ready for the remainder of the show. Keep in mind, you'll be able to stream this, the rest of the program, from KELO.com. And my thanks for being here. So long until tomorrow, and may God bless. Forgive my fat fingers.